At Forever Paws Animal Shelter, our mission is simple: place these valued animals in loving homes. Forever Paws Animal Shelter, giving animals a new leash on life.
Hey y'all, it's a shitpost weekend on Channel 2.
I can't talk to Brad. No one knows who Brad is, man. I love him. He's beautiful.
Saw this article about this study that they were conducting. I think this is in Lancaster, if I remember correctly. Lancaster in the UK. Yeah. They did this, and I say study kind of loosely because this is not a scientific study by any stretch of the imagination, but Lancaster University contracted Roger Bucknell of Fylde Guitars, that's F-L-Y-D-E, never heard of them, guitars, to build 6 steel string acoustic guitars. And I'm glad they actually used acoustics for this because, you know, I think acoustics are where you're going to notice the biggest difference. And they're saying here all of them were identical apart from the type of wood used for their backs and side plates. They say plates, but the back and sides. They were identical on the top, but again, I say identical and you use that term loosely because they're not identical. You've got different pieces of wood on the tops, you've got different necks, you've got different everything. They're not identical. You're never going to get true identical, but from one guitar to the next. It's just not going to happen. So any kind of test like this is flawed from the very outset. But essentially what they did was they, you know, again, they made everything the same except for the back and sides, the type of wood they used on the back and sides. And the thing about the back and sides of an acoustic guitar in particular is that they are often made from, you know, exotic woods that are endangered species, or, you know, they're hard to get, or they're in place, you know, they're places that have endangered habitats, or, you know, for monkeys or, you know, whatever. So yeah, there's definitely a collateral damage when you're talking about going out and, you know, foresting, like, especially if you're talking about old growth trees and stuff like that in exotic places like Madagascar, or, you know, some places in India, or definitely in, you know, South America, whatever. Now, a lot of these woods have been banned. Of course, you can still get Indian rosewood. You can't really do much with Brazilian. You have to have already bought it long ago, and I think you have to have a lot of paperwork and stuff now to even prove where this stuff came from and all of that. It's become a real problem, especially with the CITES Treaty and all of the rigmarole of that and all the hoops you have to jump through in order to sell them or to transport them across international boundaries. You know, so that's become an issue on guitars, and you know, it just feels to me like this study that they've done here started out with a conclusion and then worked backwards from there. So they've set up a test or a study that would arrive at their predetermined conclusion. They've taken 6 guitars, they've built them identical. They've got one that's Brazilian rosewood back and sides, one that's Indian rosewood back and sides, one that's mahogany back and sides, maple, sapele, and walnut. So they've got 6 different types of back and sides. They brought in 52 guitarists into a dimly lit room, and each of them played on the instruments, and they also wore welding goggles to ensure they couldn't see which guitars they had. They said they assessed the sound quality and playability, and their ratings for all 6 were very close. They say very close, which the playability's, I mean, that's not going to, you know, again, there's no such thing as identical. It's just not. You're going to have, if it's handmade, and every guitar really is handmade at the end of the day, it has to be put together. Even if you use a CNC machine, it has to be put together by hand. Yeah, there's just no way to really do this. But anyway, additionally, when 31 of the guitarists were asked to identify which instrument was which based on its sound and feel, they had considerable difficulty doing so. Which I don't doubt that, because I mean that would be hard to do. But that's not to say that they sound the same. Overall, our results suggest that the backwood has a negligible effect on the sound quality and playability of an acoustic guitar. Cheaper and sustainable woods can be used as substitutes of expensive and endangered woods without loss of sound quality, says Lancaster's Professor Christopher Plack. Professor Plack, I would have to disagree with you there in part. Now, I don't disagree with you in whole. I think definitely you could use cheaper woods on the back and sides, and you would get very close, close enough for government work, which is, I'm sure, is what you're doing here, is government work. But yeah, you know, there are differences. There are very subtle differences in in the wood on the back and sides. It is not nearly as critical as the top wood, I will grant you that, and it's not nearly as critical as the bracing on the top. The type of bracing, the size of the bracing, you know, all that kind of stuff is definitely a big part of it as well. But when you couple the top of a guitar to the back and sides, something magical does happen. The boominess comes out of the instrument. And, you know, if you just had a top there and it was nothing but the top, not connected to any back and sides, you would notice a huge difference. You need the back and sides for an acoustic to really do what we expect an acoustic to do, which is project sound waves outward. But yeah, definitely the type of back and sides wood is going to make a difference. Now, is it a huge difference? No, but is it 1 or 2 or 3% difference? That's that last 2 or 3% that takes something from being good to being magical. I would have to say yes. In some cases, there's a definite difference there, and I think if you've played as many acoustic guitars as I've played, or if you've been around it as long as I have, it's something you can't really quantify. You're not going to ever answer this question with any certainty. And, you know, while I think it's honorable, I suppose, that you've hired this guy to build 6 guitars that were identical except for back and sides so you could do some kind of test like this, I don't think your conclusions are really scientific or valid. You haven't eliminated all variables in this test. Your methodology speaks for itself. This is not a scientific test. So, there's that. All right, well, that will conclude the news. Next up, I wanted to get to a bit of... the other day, I was in the car and I was opening some viewer mail, and I had accidentally grabbed this thing from the house, and this is actually marked as a repair. I'm not sure what it is. I can't recall giving someone the okay to send something that would have been this small. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up and just see what it is. Okay, so it turns out this might have been mislabeled. This is from Dan Sperry, and Dan writes, "Hi Brad, after watching the Ampeg repair video, I went on the internet and found this Compactron socket adapter for a 6C10, 6D10, 6K11, etc. Triple triode tubes." Anyway, here, let's see. Okay, so actually... Oh, interesting. So this is a socket adapter. What the hell? This will adapt a Compactron socket to an octal? How's that meant to happen? For testing. Okay, this is for testing 6C10s, blah blah blah. This adapter is to be used with all standard emission type tube testers. I'll be damned. See the back of the card for details. Preset the tube tester for a 6SN7 tube. Locate the designed octal socket. Insert the Compactron adapter. Plug in and the test must pass some requirements for the 6SN7 tube. And with the socket in the adapter and tube remaining inserted, reset the tester for a 6SQ7. All tests must pass then for the 6SQ7. Well, interesting. I guess what it's doing then is it is wiring probably one of the triodes in parallel. So it's so you're only testing 2 of the triodes at a time. So you're testing like maybe the outside one and the middle one when you're doing the first test. And then you switch it over and you're retesting the center one again, essentially. And then you're testing the other outside one as a different tube. So yeah, that's very pretty ingenious, actually. So you didn't have to buy a whole new tube tester just because they came out with a different Compactron tube socket. That is actually very cool, man. Thank you for sending that along. I'm sorry I did not get to include that opening before, but yeah, that's really cool. Actually, I would be interested to see if do I even have one of those Compactrons? I think all of my Compactrons are actually they're out in the garage and they're kind of buried at the moment. There's a bunch of crap kind of on top of them. Also, it's like, I think we had some snow today. I'll show you some actual pictures of it. Okay, Ivy Sue, you ready to go outside?
It was snow.
There's snow.
a snowman. Oh.
You want to go try to build a snowman? You gotta be careful and don't slip. Uh-oh.
No,
Uh-oh.
I'm okay.
It's okay. It's slippery.
No. Come on. Let's go. Let's go for a snowman.
Okay, let's go. Let's go. Let's do it.
Look at that tree, Daddy. Look at that tree.
I know. It's cut off. It's cut down.
No. Yeah, they look at this.
We had some snow, and it's pretty cold out right now. I don't want to go out there just to find a Compactron. So I think though when I get a chance, I'm gonna grab a Compactron tube and see if that works. See if I can actually test that. All right, to round out this Shitpost Friday, I wanted to show you something I found at my local Goodwill the other day, and I'm still kicking myself because I did not end up getting this thing, and I'm just really dejected. The day I went, our car was full. We had the kids with us, and there was just no way for me to get it home. Again, we were in the family sedan, the Jaguar, and it actually would have fit in there if there was nobody with me, but we had everybody was with us, and there was no way to get it home. And by the time I actually called them back, like a day later, it was already gone. So of course that's the way it always works. But I did get a little bit of video of it, and I wanted to show it to you. But according to my research, this was about a 1929 RCA RE45 radio, and it also has a phonograph in the top. Or excuse me, this isn't RCA; it's a Victor rather. This was before RCA picked them up, so this is a Victor machine. But the phonograph and everything, this is all electric. So the phonograph is run by electric. So this was post hand crank era. And this is one of the first ones that was post hand crank era. But just look at this thing, man. The way this thing was built, the cabinetry, all the work that went into the cabinetry, all the work that went into every aspect of the amplifiers. I mean, it's got this huge plate on the back that says his master's voice, and it's got Nipper on there, and it's just awesome. And like I said, I'm just still kind of kicking myself that I didn't really pick this thing up. But I was a little bit put off anyway because it didn't have the dial on the front, and I thought to myself, man, there's no way I'm ever going to find a dial to replace that. And when I got home, I looked them up, and I found, of course, somebody is reproducing the dial for this model, and the dial actually was the same price as the whole machine that they were asking in Goodwill, but they wanted just $49 for this thing. I also looked up some of the prices that other people were asking for them. Now I don't know if they got these prices, but some people were asking, $1,000 to $1,200 for these things too, and they were apparently getting it because they were sold. So yeah, just kind of really dejected about not getting this thing, but it was also the other consideration was I had nowhere to put it. So it was, because it's a large console piece of equipment, and it would have taken up a lot of space in the house, and I would have had to have some place to put it that the dog's not going to chew it up, and the 2-year-old's not going to mark on it, and you know what I mean. It's just but still, man, I'm still smarting about this one that I let it go. Very clean, just in really great condition overall, just amazing condition. Usually apparently when most of these are found, they're found in very terrible condition because most people put them in their garage or put them in their basement, and then like it's everything is delaminating and on the cabinetry. But apparently the amplifier actually is somewhat prized by guitarists because of it's a push-pull amplifier, and it's transformer coupled. I forget what the power tubes are on this. I could throw up a schematic or something here, but yeah, man, just a total shame that I didn't end up with this thing. But that's it, And I walked around too with this card that you're supposed to get. Like if you're gonna buy the thing, I walked around with the card for a little while, kind of contemplating in my head, how am I gonna get this thing home, and where am I gonna put it when I get it home, and all this stuff. And I kind of just concluded right before we left, I was like, fuck it, and I put the thing back, and just really kicking myself now that I didn't go ahead and get it. But those are the brakes. You got to buy them when you see them, and you know, you don't get second chances on stuff like that usually. It reminds me, one day I walked into one of our local antique malls, and they had an upright bass, and it had a little bit of damage, but it was an older one too. It was probably from the 50s or 40s. I mean, it was old, and it was in rough shape in some areas. Like the neck was going to need some work, so I was going to have to probably take the front or back off, take the neck off, reset it and glue it real nice and everything, and probably fill some gaps and some holes and stuff too that had been kind of punched in it. So it was rough, but at the same time, it was a full, it was a 3/4 size upright bass, and they wanted $75 for it. All the pieces were there. The whole thing was there. It just needed some love, and I actually was going to get that, but that was another thing. It was another case of I don't have room to get this thing in the car. There's no way for me to get this thing home. And plus, it was on the other end of town, and I would have had to drive all the way back, after unloading everybody, and then it just would have been a real hassle the way it worked out. And I called them back and said, hey, is that thing still there? And sure enough, no, it had already been purchased by someone else. And again, you got to buy it when you see it. But yeah, that's all for this Shitpost Friday. Hope you guys have enjoyed this. If you have, please hit subscribe down below. And for now, y'all take care.